what happens if it increases, what happens when interest rates go up, how much we're going to have to pay for this in the future.
We have lived in a leasehold property. Lived in a leasehold on our first property, but it was for 999 years. But from then on, even though we only had a small ground rent, we decided that we preferred leasehold. And why was that? Just simply the principle of it, the fact that obviously the leasehold owner does have a control, even though it's a minimal payment. They do have actually control of the property, and we didn't like that.
It doesn't bother me at all. It's a 999-year lease. It doesn't change. It's a fixed rate. So I don't mind because it's 999 years. I think if it's a flat with a short lease, then I'd probably be concerned. Well, I wouldn't at £3.50 a year, but if the ground rent was increasing or started off on a high amount, I'd be concerned. Well, listen to that are today's experts in all things leasehold. I'm joined by Matt Lewis, a consultant solicitor at Commonhold and Leasehold Experts Limited. And Matt, you're also Director of Leasehold Management Professionals, which is an advice organisation for managing agents. You know this area inside out.
Thank you.
Also joining you is Martin Boyd, Chair of the Government-funded Leasehold Advisory Service, and also Chair of the Leasehold Management Partnership, which supports and campaigns on behalf of leaseholders. Martin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So look, Martin, let's start with a really simple question that we've had in an email from Deepinder. What is a leasehold?
Leasehold is the right to occupy a property for a fixed period of time, and as some of the people you spoke to, some of that ownership may be for 90 years, or it may be for a much shorter period of time.
Now, some of the people that I spoke to in the park, Matt, they're only paying quite small ground rents. It doesn't have a significant impact on their finances. In fact, the Residential Freehold Association, which represents the freeholders, it pointed to a government report that it says shows the vast majority of customers are content with the leasehold system. Are most people worried about this?
我依家接嗰個就係喺學校咁快嘅。我帶咗啲奶，即係你之前咪買咗一支支嗰啲咧，我帶咗過去，跟住即刻洗奶漿，跟住又帶咗兩個奶漿。你仲有冇啲百事筆嗰啲啊？嗰啲塊嗰啲，攞咗兜裏面嗰嚿。啲啊，嗰啲 wipes 啊，我唔知啊，冇晒啦咩我哋？頭先阿細 B 都好似唔錯啲，即係相對平時睇嘅，因為佢靠喺我爸個心口嗰度咧，跟住轉咗步。唔知喎，我今日成日開喎，我頭我唔記得帶藥添，我俾咗係俾咗2次。
Yeah, unfortunately, Scotland is the worst example of common hold that we have around the world. They didn't quite get the legislation right when they abolished leasehold, so they have a system that doesn't necessarily allow for the proper maintenance of the outside of the building. If you look at other jurisdictions, such as Australia or America or Canada, where they've implemented a full common hold strata system, buildings work far more effectively than they do in this country.
Okay, we don't have a response from Scotland, but what you're suggesting is there are perhaps other places that we can look for a solution for that. Back to my walk in the park, I also met a couple who were concerned that their freehold had been sold on.
We got our home from the builders and they sold the leasehold to an organisation who are now our landlords. So it kind of makes it difficult sometimes when we're trying to do things. And it seems like the simple home improvements we want to do on the home, you've got to ask for permission before you can do them. And to ask for permission, you want to charge you £300 just to ask without even doing anything or getting that permission.
Does that feel a bit surreal when you bought this home? This is your home.
Very much so, very much so. We had an issue with them where we were contesting a charge and everything, and their whole response was to get in touch with the mortgage company, who then said, you're going to have to just pay them, otherwise they're going to take the property off you because they own the land.
Matt, this is a really important point, isn't it? Unlike with Commonwealth, if you break the conditions of your leasehold, then it's possible within the law for you to lose your home.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's important to note a few things here. I think the first thing is that typically these sorts of restrictions do serve a really valid purpose. There are examples where that's not the case, but typically they do serve a valid purpose. And it's really important to make the point that that leaseholders need to read their leases carefully and follow those restrictions, as there are those risks that you allude to, along with possession in the eventuality that goes all the way through the statutory hurdles. In terms of the costs, these restrictions, it's also important to make sure that those things are payable. But there is also protection law at the moment that administration charges, which these typically are regulated, there are requirements that need to be demanded correctly, to be reasonable amounts of and so forth.
Martin, a lot of people might be surprised to hear you need to ask the freeholder, potentially pay to ask the freeholder to make changes to your property. Is that issue, or the issue of potentially losing your homes, is that likely to be addressed in leasehold and freehold reform?
Yeah, there are certain things that are being looked at in the bill. One of which is going to be a requirement that landlords publish these charges so that we have greater transparency than we currently have.
Okay, thank you. Matt, do people have a right to buy their freehold if they're living in a leasehold home, particularly a house where it's more straightforward?
Yeah, so there are subject to eligibility assessments. There are rights in law for a leaseholder of a house to acquire the freehold of that house, or to elect a new lease as market rent. Typically, the new lease option isn't elected, and typically leasehold house owners tend to look to acquire their freehold.
Okay, thank you. We're getting, as you might expect, a lot of emails. One topic we're hearing a lot about is ground rent. So let's hear from Tom.
Each 20 years, my ground rent doubles. So it sounded quite good 20 years ago now, but if I wind forward 20 years or 40 years, it's not fair. It's a lot of money that I'm paying away for nothing in return. You're paying full price as if it's a house on its own piece of land, but ultimately you never own that asset. You are 100% responsible for all the costs associated with that.
There's a lot going on in what Tom had to say. Doubling ground rent, that is a key issue for leaseholders, isn't it? And the Department for Housing told us it's not fair that many leaseholders face unregulated ground rents for no guaranteed service in return. At the moment, does it risk making homes unmortgageable?
So I think there are two considerations here. I think the first is the level of the rent, and the level of the rent typically causes a number of difficulties, either if it's too high with reference to the value of the property. Sometimes mortgage lenders can be unattracted by that, or conveyancers looking at properties, or if the review mechanism is unattractive in its nature and that it's too fast, or it's one
Just
of
that
the
it's going
doublers.
up too fast.
Indeed, or if it's a doubler, or if it's linked to an index which is unattractive in nature, and all of these sorts of things factor into a mortgage lender's consideration of whether or not to lend on these properties.
It can make it very difficult. Martin, the government had planned to reduce ground rents to zero or to a tiny fee, as we were saying, a so-called peppercorn rent. The Times reported at the weekend that they might instead be capping that at £250 a year instead. We've not yet been able to confirm that. What's going on?
The government is currently reviewing which option they're going to move forward with, and I think that there is speculation that there's an announcement that's imminent, but we don't know what the outcome of that decision is.
So we might get news in the near future. Thank you. Tom mentioned there the costs that were involved in his leasehold home. That can mean with the service charges and repair works that he can be billed for. Melissa's been in touch on exactly that issue, and her freeholder is her local council. We spoke before the programme.
So this was a new fire doors that we were told we would need on our bin chamber. We had just had a new door placed on our bin chamber that cost us £1,500. That lasted 3 months. The council then took that off and put new, supposedly fireproof doors on. That cost us part of an £8,000 bill for remedial works for fire safety repairs. One of those doors blew off in a storm in January, and so the bin chamber is now open. So if there was a fire in there, whatever purpose, safety purpose those doors were supposed to have is now completely ineffective, and yet we still have had to pay for that work.
Martin, it's important, isn't it, to acknowledge there will be costs associated with shared public areas, with maintaining a building. That money has to come from somewhere. At the moment, do leaseholders have any rights to oversee or to challenge the cost of works?
It can be mixed set of rights, particularly with social sector buildings. Leaseholders can go to the tribunal to challenge the reasonableness of the costs. The difficulty is at the moment the leaseholders have got no right to bear legal costs in raising that challenge, and the landlord can very often have the right to pass on their legal costs to the leaseholders.
And is this something that is going to be addressed in the bill once it passes through?
Yeah, that's another one of the issues, and perhaps one of the most important but unsexy sounding elements of the bill is this right to accounting information.
Accounting information is never unsexy on Moneybox Live.
Well, the problem is that currently you have no easy means to compare your service charge costs with another block in your area or anywhere else in the country. One of the proposals in the legislation is to move towards a standardised set of accounting information, so you will be able to compare how much it costs to repair your lifts compared to the block next door.
That's really useful. In fact, Judith has emailed on that. She's emailed to say, how come leasehold businesses are the only businesses I'm aware of that do not put up a clear price list of services? I think that's just something that might be easier to compare what other people are getting after this. Matt, getting a lot of emails about service charges. Let me read you just one from Liam. He says, I bought the property in 2017. The service charge was approximately £120 a month. The charges were then raised by about £80 to £90 a month, plus a one-off charge of over £8,000 due to roof replacement. He says, my current charges are approximately £550 a month for service charge, ground rent, and a reserve fund charge. That seems like a huge amount compared to what he paid when he first moved in, comparable to a mortgage.
Indeed, yeah, and I think it's one of the common unknown features of residential leasehold property, and that typically leases allow for variable service charge costs in an unlimited amount, in that the amount that's needed is required to be paid, and that can be all of a sudden and unknown at the point of purchase.
Thank you. Right, a lot of leaseholds, as we've been hearing, are for hundreds of years. There's no real question of time running out. Some are for much shorter periods. Let's hear from Claire now. I spoke to her earlier.
I bought my flat in 2007, at which point the lease was 81 years remaining, and I had absolutely no idea that it was about to drop under the marriage value threshold. I've never heard of marriage value until about 5 years ago, when I started thinking about it.
You decide to sign up to settle, you drive the ball off the course, and you try to drive it down the middle, and you try to get the sleep to stay away. So this tells us something really, really important, that the mental processes get in the way, and that we
we need to follow the right behavioural patterns to allow the habit to form and to take over without our sustained attention to it. And that's how you become, if you like, a good sleeper.
I think we're running out of time now, sadly. I feel like we could have done like 2 or 3 of these programs and kept on talking about sleep, which is why you have. It's entirely based on sleep. But I suppose one of the things that I just have nagging at the back of my head while we're doing this is insomnia something you can actually really do something about? Or is it something that you just have to learn to live with? Can you really solve it for the vast majority?
The answer is yes, and I hope that this programme as well helps people to understand there is a treatment, and so please do go and see your doctor if you're struggling with your sleep. I think there's a lot of people out there that just think, I've just got to live with it. I'm going on for so long now, there's nobody to help me, I've tried this, that and the other, that didn't work, so I'm just untreatable, and that isn't true. Right? As she was looking for help yourself and how reliable that is, the fact that we might try bits and actually sleep is something that we have to be really adaptable around. We have to problem solve, we might be a good sleeper for most of our life, suddenly something happens and it's all thrown out the window and we have to completely change the way that we approach sleep.
I think one of the challenges is that we live in a culture of tips. What's your best tip for this, that, the other? We expect that tip to work tonight. CBT is there to help you with that struggle. It's not there to give you a tip to solve it tonight. It's there to treat you with respect that you have struggled with this for a long time, that you have tried lots and lots of different things. And CBT is effective, not because it's heavily marketed, but because it's highly evidence-based through scores and scores and scores of clinical trials across the world. Look for help, and seek help from people that you trust. Seek help from people who've got authentic qualifications. Check them out, see if they're registered. When you're lying awake at night, the lot feels you're alone. There's probably 10 to 12% of the population just like you. You're very powerful. Ali, Bailey, Colin, thank you so much for taking program. Huge thanks to everyone. I didn't come away from this program with more optimism than I thought that I would do, though there was a little bit of feedback like isn't something just something that you reach a point where you just have to suck it up. But our trio here today have given me the optimism that there are solutions out there. So I hope you found it a useful program to listen to, and I'll see you next time.
Inside Health was presented by James Gallagher and produced by Jerry Holt. You can keep in touch with the team by emailing insidehealth@bbc.co.uk. Well, tonight is next, but first a look at the weather. Tonight Scotland will have a clear and chilly night, but the northeast will see showers, some wintry over the hills towards dawn. Eastern England will stay largely cloudy with a few isolated showers. Elsewhere in the UK, skies will be clearer at first, before become increasingly cloudy through the early hours, with a few light showers in places. Tomorrow, England and Wales will see plenty of cloud with a few scattered showers. In northeastern Scotland, showers and hill snow will linger. Western Scotland and Northern Ireland will stay drier and slightly sunny. On Friday, much of the country will have a day of sunshine and showers, with also close snow in the north. On 92 to 95 FM, on BBC Sounds and on your smart speaker. This is Radio 4.
Hello, it's 10 o'clock. Welcome to the world tonight. I'm Eugene Cardinal. President Biden has signed into law a long-awaited military aid package from Ukraine worth $61 billion that would allow the flow of desperately needed arms to the country. A resident of one of Ukraine's counterfeit cities.
This is something everyone has been waiting for quite a long time already. I wish we could see some results and something that could make our people feel safer.
Will assess how quickly the munition will reach Ukraine and ask how much of a game changer they could be on the battlefield. Also tonight, thousands of pro-Palestinian student protesters have clashed with police across the US. The demonstration spread to more college campuses, organised in New York, where those protests began. And we'll speak to Britain's first qualified astronaut in nearly a decade.
It has always been a dream for me to be an astronaut. I've always been fascinated by space, the vastness of it, the beauty of other galaxies, the solar system. It's really always captured me.
And politicians and trainers. Isn't it a good look?
I have been wearing Adidas trainers for many, many years.
As Nigel Farage becomes the latest political leader to show off his Adidas sneakers, plus following all that coming up after
A teenage girl has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after two teachers in the Northern Cuba were stabbed at a school in South West Wales. Emergency services, including 2 air ambulances, were called to the secondary school at Canterbury in Norwich, which was the last to London. Wales correspondent Howard Griffith.
The numbers of these were slightly and signatures after the event again. Also, there was a report of red message to Kentucky. Teachers to not be classrooms. Police say that 2 teachers and 1 student were stabbed. Do not from injuries. The teenage girl arrested in the school is in police custody. Officers say the police were police. Lockdown was brought to an end in the school day of pupils will be awaited by parents. Hundreds of pupils are going to be used for days. School will be closed tomorrow.
Former leader of the DUP, Jeffrey Donaldson, has appeared in court charged with historical sex offences, including one rape. Released on bail by the New Magistrates Court. His wife, Lady Erica Donaldson, was also charged in connection with the case. Sir Jeffrey has previously said he will contest the charges. Correspondent Jennifer O'Leary sent this report outside the court.
Sir Jeffrey Donaldson faced a media scam as he walked into the Magistrates Court. He had been seen in public since his arrest and resignation as DUP leader last month. The 61-year-old MP for Ragged Valley was charged with 11 historical sex offences, gross indecency towards a child, 9 counts of indecent assault and 1 rape. In court also was his wife, Lady Eleanor Donaldson, who faces 4 charges of aiding and abetting her husband's alleged offences. Both only spoke to confirm their names and dates of births. Neither defendant was asked to formally enter a plea. They were each released on £350 bail.
President Biden says the US will begin sending new military assistance to Ukraine within hours after he signed the long-awaited bill passed by Congress. Speaking at a press conference at the White House, Mr. Biden said the aid, worth equivalent to nearly £50 billion, would make America and the world safer. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the support would help continue to protect lives from Russian attacks. 3 men have been arrested by the National Crime Agency as part of an investigation into the deaths of 5 migrants who attempted to cross the Channel to reach the UK yesterday. Those being questioned are aged between 19 and 22. 2 are from Sudan, the other is from South Sudan. Craig Turner, the NCA's Deputy Director of Investigations, says the agency is working hard to secure convictions.
This tragic incident once again demonstrates the threat to life posed by these crossings and brings into focus why it's so important to target these criminal gangs involved in organised crime. The NCA, with partners and also partnering with close counterparts, will obviously collect evidence, identify those responsible for this event and bring them to justice.
The mother of one of the victims of the fatal stabbings in Nottingham last year has written an open letter to police officers in a WhatsApp group criticising what she called the callous and degrading language some of them used. A number of officers who responded to the attacks by Valdo Calacane used the messaging app to share their reactions immediately afterwards. Emma Webber, whose 19-year-old son Barnaby was killed, said the comments had caused even more trauma for the victims' families. She said one message she had seen dehumanised her son and the other victims, 19-year-old Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates, who was 65.
The initial message